This is the Nomadic Traveler podcast. Welcome to Nomadic Traveler podcast. I am your host, Jason.
And your co-host, Nicole.
And we have an exciting podcast for you today. We've got
the Indie Travel podcast
from New Zealand.
Ooh, our first out of the United States.
First out of the country guest. We are super excited to have them. They have their own podcast called the Indie Podcast. Am I saying that right?
Indie Travel Podcast.
The Indie Travel Podcast. Sorry about that.
And it's Linda and Craig.
So, yeah, Linda and Craig Martin. So, we're super excited to have them, and we're going to get started with them in just a moment. All right, before we start today's show, we have a special announcement.
We just got a sponsor.
And we are super excited about it. Today's sponsor is Indie Wiring Services. They are based in Brownsburg, and they specialize in high-end wiring harnesses for motorsport and industrial prototyping applications. From project cars to Indy cars to hybrid vehicle prototyping, Indie Wiring can meet your needs. Check them out at indiewiring.net.
So what is that exactly?
So they do all like the wiring for like all of the IndyCar teams. So they make these like big giant download cables that they like. So the car will go out there, run a few laps. They plug in this giant download cable and download data from the car. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of points of data from the car to their computers, and then they can keep fine-tuning the car. So it's for all the different engineering teams. Mm-hmm. They do all the individual wiring on it. They make like speed sensors. They make the wiring for the little LED displays that are on like the back of like the gas tank, like right behind the driver's head. It shows like the time they're running on that lap. It shows like the time that they're in the pits.
Can it tell if something's wrong with the car?
I think they flash yellow if they're in the pits or if they're under caution. I don't think it tells if something's wrong with the car.
So it's really pivotal to a team. Like you have to have that.
They need it, yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
It's major.
Do people who are not like Indy 500 racers, do they use this?
I do think hobbyists use it. So I think if you had like your own race car that you went and drove around in different classes, I don't know if he does anything for like dragsters and stuff like that. I know there's a lot of people that go out to, O'Reilly Raceway Park now, formerly IRP, Indy Raceway Park. So I don't know if they do anything for that, but I think if you have a need, I would give them a call and, see if they can help you out. We're gonna send Nicole's car over there after the show, and we're gonna get it completely rewired. She's got lots of problems. It's horrible.
It needs a little bit more than rewiring.
It needs. Maybe they can put a new engine in and some new brakes.
Make it maybe not a Volkswagen. Just switch that up.
Sponsor, not sponsor.
But sponsor is a sponsor now.
Indie Wiring is a sponsor. Volkswagen is not.
Yes. So
if you guys think that they can help you out, you need to contact Jeremy Gibson at indiewiring.net, or you can call them at 317-371-7044. Indie Wiring will be our sponsor through the month of May, and around Indianapolis, May is IndyCar month, the whole month. So we decided to make May Indie Wiring month. So thanks so much, guys. We're glad to have you. All right, today's show is going to be with Craig and Linda Martin with the Indie Travel podcast. Welcome, guys.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, great to be here.
All right, we're so excited to have you. You are our first guest from out of the United States.
Oh, so special.
Nice one. Yeah. Not quite on the other side of the world, but we are calling in from the future.
Yeah.
Sunday morning here, Saturday evening for you guys. So thanks for giving up your Saturday to chat with us.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So we almost did it wrong because we thought that it was going to be 7 p.m. on the same day. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, no, wait, I think they might be in the future.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, the lottery numbers are. No.
Yes, please share.
Yes. Well, thank you guys for giving up your time. I know you guys are busy people.
No worries at all.
Yeah. So we just wanted you to maybe just tell the listeners a little bit kind of about yourself and kind of what you do and how you got started in travel.
Sure.
Cool. Well, we knew each other and through university, and when we came out the other side of that, we decided to go and travel in New Zealand and Australia. There's this concept called the OE, or the Overseas Experience, which is where you disappear overseas for 6 to 24 months and go and see what the world's like. Because, we're so far away from everything here.
Yeah.
And then, so we decided to do that, but we wanted to get a little bit of money behind us first, so we didn't end up just kind of going somewhere and getting stuck. And then we decided to teach English. So I spent a couple of years in New Zealand, getting a bit of bankroll together, paying off student loans and debts, all that kind of stuff. And then when we started traveling, we could travel indefinitely. So that first trip, we said, let's buy one-way tickets. Let's plan to go for 3 to 5 years. And 3.5 years later, we did make it back home. And within a week of arriving back in New Zealand, before we even got back to our home city, we had booked tickets back out again. So
Turns out we're not very good at staying in one place.
yeah, we were kind of hooked at that point. And so that trip started in 2000 end of 2005, started 2006, and has just really slowed down in the last couple of years, where we've been spending 6 to 9 months in a place more often than not, rather than at one point I think we're up at about 50 countries a year.
Wow.
And so
I think the maximum was 25. Yeah, but basically, quite often we've gone to one place for 6 months and then traveled frantically for a while and then stayed somewhere for a while and then traveled again. So there's always been a bit of a mix to it. It's never been, changing every few days or every week for longer than a few months, because it does get really tiring.
Yeah, like a waxing and waning period kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you guys spend much time at home at all, or?
Well, actually, we've just decided to spend a bit of time in New Zealand because we've been traveling for 13 years, and I was starting to miss home, miss family, and miss the routine. And I was also missing teaching. After a year or so of teaching, we started the podcast, and then that became Craig's full-time job. And then I started working with him, and we kind of stopped teaching. And as well as the podcast, we also run a web development and hosting business. So I worked with Craig on that for 3 years, and I realized really not for me. So I wanted to go back to teaching. And the best way to do that would be to come home, have a home base, and I'd be able to work at a language school. So in about December last year, we came back. We've moved into an apartment, and yeah, we're planning to be here indefinitely, but that probably means a year or two. We're just not very good at stopping.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one thing people think about a lot is like, would you rather see a lot of places or like know one place really well?
Yeah, that's something we've really tried to find the balance in. And I think that traveling full time or long term is quite different from it's definitely different from going on a short trip, but it's even really different from going on like a 1 year trip. Because with 1 year, you might have a couple of slow periods in there, but really you can keep pushing because you know that, when it rolls around, you're going to be back in the office in a little while, and you still want to put in as much as you can.
Sure.
By about year 5, you're like, yeah. And so we've managed to make that work through, I guess, in the last few years doing more house sitting. And so we get the loan of a pet without having to pay any vet bills. And we also get a house and a built-in community of neighbors and, so-and-so down the street that'll help you out, and, the local pub down the road. And so you get that built-in community. And because we're house sitting, we're often staying for 3 to 8 months in one place, and it allows us to build up those local routines and relationships.
Sure. And then after that, we'll have 2 weeks of just crazy travel and go to 3 or 4 places.
Yeah. When you guys first decided that this is what you wanted to do, how did people kind of react to you, and what did they say when you were like, we want to do this full time? And
I think that the initial trip was within the normal narrative of New Zealand life, right? Going and doing the OE
Yeah.
It's
is
just a rite
just
of passage.
it's part of it.
Yeah.
If you're in your late 20s and applying for a job here and there's not overseas experience on there, if you haven't, dropped off the work radar for a year or so, or, you've got something in London or in, wherever, people kind of scratch their heads and go, what do you know about the world?
Yeah.
And so that's part of the narrative. Where it kind of went screwy was when we never stopped. And
Yeah.
so, and that conversation was kind of ongoing, right? I
So
know
when are
that.
you coming home?
Yeah,
When are you going to spend a bit of time in Auckland?
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's important that your parents remember what you look like, especially as they get older.
It's actually worked quite well because my parents were living in Auckland and Craig's dad and stepmom lived in Christchurch. And as we would come home every year or year and a half, we ended up flying down to Christchurch, spending some time with his parents, then flying across to Melbourne where my sister lives, spending some time with her, and then going overseas from there. And then on the way back, we kind of repeated it. So we've actually ended up seeing a lot of my sister and a lot of Craig's parents, and of course our parents. My mum lives in Auckland. My dad's moved to Gisborne recently, so extra trips are now required. But it's actually worked out quite well because we just incorporated these visits into our travel schedule, and I think we actually ended up seeing more of Craig's dad and my sister than we would have if we were just in Auckland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I never thought about it like that.
I think it's very different for us. I think if we spent more than a couple weeks traveling a year, my parents would think it was weird. Don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely that is so cool that it's like the norm to have experiences before you sit down and stay.
I think it makes way more sense, quite honestly.
That's such a
Yeah.
cool aspect.
We have kind of pushed the limits a little bit.
That's okay.
We took it from normal to that's not really normal at all, is it? No.
But what is normal?
That's a good question.
That's right. Have you guys ever, is there anything that you do miss or feel like you missed out on while being full-time travelers?
Yeah, I think there are two aspects to that. One's the social side of it, and the other one's the economic side of it. So in terms of finances, when we look at our peers that did the normal thing and stopped, saved up, got a deposit, got a house, they managed to ride, I think, Auckland's biggest housing boom in its history. And so we kind of look at that and go, well, we're okay, but we didn't do that, and we spent our money on experiences and on stories and tacos. Yeah. And so we're really happy with that trade-off. We look at it and go, would we have done it another way? And the answer is no. But then
Just bad luck, really.
Right,
The time that we were away was when there was this big housing move. If we had managed to magically know that if we bought a house at this point, it would be worth 5 times as much. But you can say that about absolutely anything in your world, right? If you had magically known, if you had this knowledge. And yeah, I still think we made the right choice with the information we had.
And then the other side of it's the social aspect, like when people are going through hard times, or they're going through illness or, whatever problems they're having, and you're on the other side of the world and can have a, 20-minute phone call every now and again. You miss those connections with people. It's awesome to be around for the good times, but it's really important to be around for the bad times.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that we've constantly missed out on, being there for our friends.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
And
sense.
yeah. So, they're not decisions that we'd make differently, but it's just part of the reality of being away.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think we just did a podcast the other day about materials versus like experiences. So.
Yeah, materialism versus travel. So
One thing we realized was that we're super, super minimalist. We got at a yoga retreat a few years ago, and we had we travel with just carry-on size bags, so they're small. We don't have very much stuff at all, and we've worked out exactly what we need to pack for this size. And every time someone said, "Oh, does anyone have scissors? Does anyone have a first aid kit? We always had everything. And someone said to us, oh, you're so minimalist. And we said, what? No, we're not minimalist. What are you talking about? And we took it as an offense. And then I realized, actually, yeah, we are. We're minimalist. We don't like to have a lot, but we like to have just the things that we need. And so, yeah, coming back to New Zealand and kind of setting up this apartment, we've gone a bit crazy buying stuff, but it's all been stuff that makes our life a bit better. But still, we still have a ridiculously small amount of stuff in our room.
Yeah.
Well, and I bet you can find that usually you can find somebody with scissors, right? The stuff is always around that you need, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but we have it. We just have a very small version, or we just have exactly the thing that we need.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Right.
Gotcha.
Yep. You're not filling your pack with other stuff, you know.
we don't have a pack that's just clothes. We have half clothes and then half anything that might be needed.
Nice.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. Those experiences that you'll have forever versus the things that pass on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's one of the best things that we've learned about travel is, and we've taken it to almost a religious fervor, is this idea of having one carry-on bag is the ultimate kind of setup for life, and
For our entire life.
putting everything you need into there. And, there are some things that are vitally important, like wine bottle openers, that, you can't take through security. So you end up buying a lot of those. But most of everything you need, you can fit into one carry-on bag. And if you can't do that, you're either transporting alcohol or doing something wrong. And that's been true for us in the style of travel that we've done.
Absolutely. The number one travel tip is travel light. You don't need more than a carry-on size bag.
Travel light.
That's what your most recent episode is about too, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of episodes about that.
Yeah, it's freed us up to do so much. If you can just take everything you've got with you and chuck it on your back and go somewhere else, you're not worried about, we're going from here to there, I need to get a taxi, or we check out at this time and we're going to have to come back, or we're going to have to store our bags somewhere. Because it's convenient and nicer to store your bag and go back, but when it's not convenient, you can just chuck it on your back and go. And that's given us a lot of freedom for the small things.
I really
Plus,
like
it's
that
cheaper.
a lot. Yeah,
Plus,
absolutely.
it's cheaper. I mean, quite often you have to pay for a cheap bag.
Yeah.
Plus, you save time because you don't have to wait for the bag to come out on the luggage carousel. So, just so many benefits.
I like that a lot.
That's awesome.
Well, one thing I want to ask is, while you're talking about going through like security and stuff, have you guys ever had any problems with security? Have you brought anything you're not supposed to bring through? Have you run into any like customs issues on any trips?
The weirdest thing about living in our globalized society with international airline laws is how different they all are.
Yeah.
So we've had the things that we've taken through security dozens of times, and then someone decides that it's no good. Or like nail scissors, for example. I think the standard is you can have a small blade up to
It's like 1 centimeter.
It's a bit more than that, but it's less than 1 inch. It's like 2 centimeters or something, which is designed for allowing nail scissors and things through. And then you go into one airport and they'll be like, no, you can't have that. It's like in our airspace, you can't do that. So it's like, that's cool. 75% of the world's flights, that's fine, but on these, no. And so things like that just constantly
It's irritating.
catch you. And it's, the frustration is just that this makes no sense. But you just have to take a deep breath, give up whatever item you've carefully chosen and bought because it fits these regulations.
And was probably twice as expensive as something else you could have bought.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And give it up and walk away. And so I think those are the biggest frustrations that we've had. We're lucky because of our nationality and our ethnicity that we don't have, kind of ingrained problems with security. And so it's been those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Or I remember once going through Heathrow, we had some cleaning fluid, like furniture polish, had been sprayed on the table before we went to the airport, and it had got on my laptop. And so my laptop was like fully, double, triple bomb tested, and I got a bit of an extended interview around my hobbies and pastimes.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it
We
was,
eventually established that it was his furniture polish that was just had residual powder on his laptop.
yeah.
Wow.
And so there's all sorts of like minor emergencies like
Yeah.
that. But it's not like I've ever got us kicked off a train crossing the Ukrainian border or something like that, eh, Linda?
Shut up.
That sounds awesome.
No, it wasn't ideal. What happened was we were traveling to Moldova and Ukraine, and Moldova had been on our list since we got married. When we got married, we stopped into a secondhand bookshop. We were picking up some books for our honeymoon because we are geeks. And one of the books we got was called Playing the Moldovans at Tennis. And we'd never heard of this country, Moldova. So after reading the book, which was hilarious, we thought, we've got to get to Moldova. We've got to get to Moldova.
First of all, we had to establish it was a real country.
Well, yeah, we weren't sure. We thought it was one of those made-up countries, And then I was talking to my dad about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, Moldova. They've got this great wine festival every October." And we're like, "Right." So when we go to Moldova, we'll go in October, so we can go to the wine festival. So many, many years passed, and finally, eventually, we had tickets to go to Moldova. And what was great was that in the past, you had to get a visa to go to Moldova, but the year before or 2 years previously, they'd changed the laws, and we no longer needed a visa. So that was excellent. And we decided to add on a trip to Ukraine. And I don't know, I must have just assumed that Ukraine had also changed their visa laws because I didn't apply for a visa. And it turns out that they hadn't changed the laws, and New Zealanders were still required to have a visa. And we were on a train from Moldova to Ukraine, and I just suddenly thought, one of those flashes of horror, I better just check this. So I got on the internet and I had a look. And you know that horrible sinking feeling when your stomach just falls away when you realize that you've made a terrible mistake? Yeah, so I had that. And because, I needed a visa. Craig was fine because he has a British passport, and for some reason, people from the UK don't need a visa, whereas New Zealanders do. So anyway, they came along, checking their passports, and they came to me and they checked it. And I could see them kind of flicking through a notebook to see if New Zealanders needed a visa. And no, and we crossed the border, and they escorted us off the train. And then they put us into a car to take us back to the border because the train didn't actually have a stop anywhere near the border. So it was like a 10-minute drive back to the actual border, where we got put into a small room, and it was freezing. It was really, really cold. I've never been so cold. We didn't have enough clothes to kind of make ourselves warm. And yes, we then had to go through a long, involved process of filling in forms and signing things, and then getting put on a train back to Moldova.
Wow.
At which point I had to spend, I think I spent about 3 days trying to get a visa because first of all, it was a public holiday. The next day was Sunday. And then I could finally go and get it, and then it took 2 more days. So we got a bit more time in Moldova than we expected. And yeah, it was not what we'd planned.
That's how you learn, right?
Definitely. And it was, the worst thing is that I always check, and I had checked, but I just missed one part of the checking process.
Yeah.
And my brother later went to Ukraine. He's like, "Yeah, so I heard that New Zealanders need a visa." So someone learned.
Yeah. Well, and I think like with travel, something's bound to mess up your plans. I mean, it's always going to happen. So
Something's going to go wrong, and that's just how it is.
yeah. How would you say you guys kind of handle that, or do you have like a normal thing you kind of do? Do you laugh it off, or how do you guys play it when something drastically changes your direction?
Yeah, I think we've adapted well to living with significant uncertainty. And so that's something that we've definitely learned from travel, where we're both kind of, well, I'm quite a systems-oriented person, and Linda's quite a kind of a rhythm-oriented person, likes to have a pattern to things. But then because of travel and the way that life works, we've really both adapted to, okay, I have this pattern, and then next week I'm going to have that pattern. And so that's really helped us. And we just kind of look at it and go, well, this is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And that's how that works.
Quite often we have several options. So we might not book too many nights of accommodation in advance because we don't know if we'll use all of them. Sometimes we'll book quite a lot of time, and sometimes we'll just say, okay, let's book our first night and then see how we go.
Yeah.
So we tend to have many options up our sleeve, and then we'll make a final decision on the ground.
Yeah. We tend to think in continents and weeks or months rather than in, specific cities or accommodation options.
But it really depends on the trip.
When you travel, do you find that they can normally accommodate you when you kind of fly by the seat of your pants like that?
Oh, sure. There's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's designed to give you a place to sleep, things to do, something to eat. It's very, very seldom that you don't have any options at all.
Especially since Booking.com started to allow you to book that same night. Because several years ago, you had to book the day before for almost all booking websites. And these days, it's much easier to book for today.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the amazing thing. There's an entire industry that's designed to help you do that in maybe, in 100% of the Western world and probably in about 70% of the entire world.
It's probably just a matter of being aware of busy periods, because when things are really booked out in a place that you want to go to, that can cause problems.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you don't have accommodation booked for, what's it called? What's the big beer festival in Germany that's just gone out of my head?
Oktoberfest.
There we go. We'll edit this. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have accommodation organized for Oktoberfest, you're gonna be in trouble. But
then you're wanting to be in Munich for Oktoberfest, right? So that's a hard plan. So in that case, it's a hard plan that you want to do something. You'll book that. Whereas if you're just traveling around going, I like this place, I'll stay for longer, I'll go somewhere else, then you don't need to have such firm plans.
Yeah, we decided once we were going to go from Scandinavia to Spain. So we pulled up the booking aggregators and found the cheapest flight from anywhere in Scandinavia to anywhere in Spain for the week that we wanted to travel. And we ended up flying into Pamplona.
No, Valencia.
No, sorry. Gosh. Sunday morning. Sorry, guys.
It's all right.
And we ended up flying into Valencia, and we said to a friend who was going to be around, hey, we're going to be in Valencia these dates. He said, oh, you're coming for La Tomatina. And we went, no, we're not. And La Tomatina is this huge tomato throwing festival. Huge amounts of people. They've limited it now, but it used to be up to 60,000 people would cram into this tiny little town outside of Valencia and throw tomatoes at each other for a couple of hours.
1 hour.
That is amazing.
I saw this on Discovery Channel recently. It looks pretty cool.
It was quite manic, especially before they started limiting the numbers when we were there. But we're like, we can't do that because we've booked in, we found the cheapest flight available. And, we booked into a nice hostel for a couple of nights before we decided what we're doing. And it wasn't super expensive. It was fine. It was all normal. It's like, no, because I'm going there just for this. And you're there over those dates.
And it turns out we'd booked for 4 nights. So we were arriving 2 nights before La Tomatina. And we'd booked for the first 2 nights of our stay, but not for the last 2 nights of our stay. And the last 2 nights of our stay were the night before and the night after. So it turns out that the accommodation that we'd booked for the first 2 nights, perfectly normal pricing, but then for the next 2 nights before and after La Tomatina, tripled in price.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. We were hoping to just extend our stay, which is quite often what we do, book for a night or 2 and then just, stay for a couple of extra nights. They said, yes, you can definitely do that if you're willing to pay a lot more money. So we ended up changing location. And we found actually a really nice place with a pool, which was important because it was very hot.
Yeah. Well, we ended up in a business hotel, like in the commercial district rather than in the nice old town. But there's always options. Yeah, there's always options, even if it's jumping on a train for another hour and going to the next city.
Which we've done more than once.
Yeah, it's true. Backpacking around Europe with no plans in the height of summer, a lot of those popular cities are fully booked for budget accommodation. And so, yeah, so you go, that's cool. Just jump back on the train, go to the next one.
Yeah.
I've done cross-country drives here in the States before, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to take off and I'm going to go drive somewhere and I'll grab a hotel whenever I'm tired. And if you're not careful and you're doing it too close to a holiday, then I've had problems before where I can't find anywhere to stop, or I need to get way off of my route to stop. So if you're trying to go from point A to point B, you don't want to have to take a big detour. So I found that,
We had that
yeah,
in Argentina.
Yeah, yeah. But these problems are all solvable. And I think that's the thing to remember with travel is that you might not get exactly if you want a precise outcome, you should plan it precisely.
yeah,
If you want to just go and see what happens, then go and see what happens,
And what happens might be a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, yeah, and that's cool. And you've got to, neither of them are better than another,
Sure.
It all depends on the goal of your trip and your emotional energy. And I know that sometimes we go, oh, this is so planned and it's a bit boring. And then other times we go, I just wish we had a plan. Like, I wish we knew where we were going and where we were stopping.
Yeah.
So we've done both, and neither of them are better. They're just different ways to experience the world, I guess.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's important that our listeners hear that there are two sides, though, because I think in our culture, a lot of times we're very planned and very, by the book. And I think there maybe is a little beauty to kind of going with the flow, like the little things you might see that you would never see if you were strictly on the path. So I think
I like to fly by the seat of my pants.
yeah, I think that's what, but like you said, yeah, there's beauty in both sides of it. But I think I wonder if a lot of our listeners or just a lot of people I've talked to, they don't really get to experience maybe the beauty of the other side of kind of just go with the flow and
Yeah,
It also depends on how much time you have. Like if you've only got a week or 2 weeks, then you probably want to be more planned so that you can make sure you fit in all the things that you want to do.
Absolutely.
And yes, that means you miss out on some of the opportunities of just going with the flow, but it means you do get to tick off those things you want to do. Whereas if you've got a lot of time, you can balance between the planned phases and the unplanned phases.
Yeah.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
But even if people are traveling for a week or two, they could say, okay, we've got one day that's completely unplanned. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's an easy way to just incorporate that into a more structured trip.
Yeah, or if you definitely want to go to Rome and you definitely want to go to Venice, why don't not plan 3 days in the middle or 2 days in the middle and just go, we're going to choose where we go after we get there. We're going to talk to some people and we're going to, there's trains and flights and cars and taxi. There's a million options to get between here and there. Let's decide what we do along the way. And you might find a great deal on a villa or a cooking school in the middle of Tuscany, or, someone invites you to go up and stay in their village. Anything could happen. And so that's a good way to incorporate some of that, into the mix.
And that's kind of how I've dealt with it too. I try to plan the couple days at the front and a couple days at the end, and I try to leave myself a gap in the middle where it's kind of the free-for-all days.
Sure. Yeah, speaking of those, just kind of leisure experiences that you don't expect, what have been like maybe some of the best, maybe not stories that you've heard along the way, but maybe interesting people that you've met, or interesting things that you've experienced that you didn't expect, that were unexpected?
Oh, we've had so many. We've met so many wonderful people. One of my favorites was we were traveling around Argentina with two friends of ours, and we'd been doing some wine tasting. We arrived in our hostel, and for some reason there was just this one table in the hostel, and there was already a couple sitting there. And our two friends went off to have a rest, but we decided to sit and have a glass of wine. So we asked the couple at the table if we could join them. They had cheese and we had wine, and it was the start of a beautiful friendship.
Right?
So it turns out that they lived on the other side of Argentina in a place called Villa de la Plata, which is near Buenos Aires. And they said, you've got to come and stay with us sometime. And we said, okay. So towards the end of our trip, we sent them a message saying, can we come and stay with you? And we did. We went and stayed with them for 2 or 3 days. Then about maybe 2 years later, we were coming back to South America, and they said, you've got to come and stay with us. And so we said, all right, we'll come and stay with you. And we've spent a couple of weeks in Buenos Aires, and then we went down to visit them. We hadn't decided how long we were staying. This conversation had not been had. So we're sitting around in the kitchen drinking mate, which is Argentinian tea. And the mother of the woman of the couple came in. She's like, "Oh, you guys, great to see you." Gives us big hugs and kisses, Argentinian style. She said, "So, how long are you staying?" And we kind of looked around because we hadn't had this conversation. We said, "Well, we haven't talked about it, but if it's okay, we'd kind of like to stay for a week." And everyone said, "Oh," like this was terrible. You're only staying for a week. We're really sad about that.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was just so sweet. And we ended up just having all sorts of adventures with them. We went to her mum's house for dinner, and we went out bowling with their friends, and it was just really, really cool. Oh, and then we went on a random road trip, which was the road trip that I mentioned before, where we were traveling around. We hadn't got accommodation. We were trying to find some
It was
accommodation.
a public holiday.
Yeah.
They were taking us around all the tourist hotspots by car, and there was nowhere to stay.
Absolutely nowhere.
Wow.
Yep. It was great.
Do you guys still keep in contact with them, or?
Yeah, we're Facebook friends. We haven't seen them for a while, but
Yeah.
it's one of those relationships where if we're ever in the same place, we'll definitely hang out together. But they're great people. So
Yeah, and there's so many of those. Like
Yeah.
we almost have our best friends per city,
yes,
and they're people that you don't really see, but then we're probably, I don't know, there's 100 cities where if we go in, we know the first person that we're calling. And yeah, it's great fun to have that. But I guess there's that bittersweetness, you go, if we were living in this city, we'd probably be best friends and see each other often and really share our lives together, and but it's like, but we only see you once every 2 or 3 years because that's how often we come around. And so so that's a really interesting dynamic.
It
With
allows you
some
to have.
people, we've had a bit.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it allows you to have lots of best friends.
Well, that's right. And with some people, we have kept in touch in a more, I don't know, tight kind of way. Like one couple that we stayed with in Jerez in the south of Spain came to visit us in Berlin, which was really cool. And we went to visit them again. So, we've kept in a bit closer contact with them. We've got a campaign going to get them to visit us in New Zealand, but haven't been successful as yet. But yeah, it's really nice that we know that when we go to visit these people, that they're going to be the people we hang out with.
I love it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What do you guys think as far as what are your favorite places? Like, what's the best food that you would say you've had while traveling?
Wow, what a question.
Or what are some of the best? Let's say that.
I always love going to Spain because I love the tapas there. So tortilla española is like a potato omelet. So good. It's one of my favorite things.
So simple.
It's so simple, yeah. But when I go there, I'm like, right, where are we going to get the tortilla? Sometimes we don't even leave the airport, which is a bad idea because tortilla española in the airport isn't your best choice. But it's okay. Yeah, so that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I think right around Spain we have so many good food memories. Mainly late at night with a bunch of friends, bar hopping, from place to place
Too
and
much
going
wine.
in. Yeah, too much wine, too much food, and some really good strong memories of that.
But then everywhere we've been, we've got some great memories about food. I mean, think about Mexico. Think about our crazy meals in the Casa Particulares in Cuba, and just so many cool places. It's I don't know. Everywhere has great food. Oh, except for Laos. Yes, I remember traveling around Laos, and it was particularly bad. But we did have a great food experience in Laos because we were on one of these hop on hop off bus tours, and we stopped in a small town that had a little market, and you could go around and buy different foods. So we had some chicken, and we got a few different things. So we're sitting there at our table with a bunch of people from our tour group, and we had bought a bag of insects. I think they were
Like boiled grubs.
boiled grubs, And we bought it because we thought, well, we've never eaten insects before, so we should try it. And the smallest amount we could buy was an enormous bag.
It's like a half-kilo bag.
It was huge, it was this big bag. And so we had 2 or 3 each, and we're like, right, we don't like those, that's fine, we've done it. So then we're sitting at this table, and people from our group kept coming over and saying, oh, can we sit with you? And we're like, yeah, after you eat your grub.
It's a good way to make friends. That's
And then
awesome.
someone else, like a random traveler, came over and said, excuse me, where did you get that chicken? And we're like, we'll tell you if you eat a grub.
Oh, that's
By
awesome.
by the end of it, though, we still had like 95% of these insects, so no one decided they were their favorite source of protein for the day. And we had a woman came up and she was begging and she was pointing at the bag and asking,
She could have
trying
some.
to indicate, can I have some of those? And Linda turned around with this huge smile on her face, realizing she could now offload them. It gave her the whole bag and smiled and nodded and then
That's awesome.
turned back to our table. And this woman was like,
She thought she was going to get.
did the double take. She's like, oh, I get the whole lot. And she was stoked, and
We were very
Linda
stoked.
was very happy to have offloaded them.
It was a perfect solution.
That
That's
is
amazing.
wonderful.
I love that.
Yeah. So I think kind of to wrap up our little session here, we kind of wanted to know. A lot of our listeners maybe are kind of local travelers or whatever, or maybe are thinking about traveling to overseas in different countries and maybe have some hesitancies as far as maybe language barriers or just different things that they might be worried about. Would you have any advice or anything to kind of appease those feelings of kind of worries or anxieties?
I think, it's always hard to get in someone's head and give helpful advice in that situation. But I think that the world isn't a scary place. And for most of the places that your listeners would want to travel, uh, people have a very similar, maybe not identical, but a similar enough set of values. They want their kids to be healthy and do well. They want tomorrow to be a little bit better than it is today. And, there's nothing absolutely different about the people. And you just have to go, maybe things won't be perfect, but that's cool because we're not making a movie here. What we're trying to do is make some memories
Yeah.
and to just buy the ticket and go.
Totally worth it.
As I said, there's a whole industry designed to help you find something to eat, where to stay, things to do. That's not going to be a problem at all. So just book the ticket and jump on the plane.
Absolutely. And regarding the language barrier, like Craig said, there's a whole industry designed to help you. And most people in the travel industry speak English. However, if you want to make your trip a little bit better, you can make a bit of an effort to learn a few words in the language, just like 10 words. Learn yes, no, hello, goodbye, please, thank you, beer, wine, coffee, and where's the toilet.
Yeah.
And then you can say, hello, 1 beer, please. And I mean, you've used like one of your 10 words or 3 of your 10 words and you've made a sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say that last phrase is probably one of the most valuable, like, where's the toilet? Because you can mime, I'm hungry, and you can mime, I'm thirsty, and you can point at bottles and point at food, but you don't want to be stuck miming, where is the toilet? Right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I don't know, Craig, because that one time you tried to mime that you wanted a glass of red wine didn't turn out so well.
no, I ended up with a salad-sized bowl of freshly chopped tomatoes. But, no one's going to die because of an issue like that. And that's the thing. Like, you're not going to make such a terrible mistake that something awful is going to happen. You're going to have stuff that you can laugh about forever. And, you're not going to starve to death. You're going to be fine.
I was just going to say the same thing. It makes a funny story. So if nothing else, you got a good story.
I love that, how you said, everybody wants their children to be happy, and then everybody wants tomorrow to be a little bit better than today. That's wonderful. I like that a lot. That's really cool. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. It's great. Learned a lot of information, huh?
Yeah, maybe we can have Mac again. They got lots of good stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't even touched the
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
the tip
yeah.
of the iceberg of our travel stories.
That's amazing. All right.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks so much for
Yeah.
having us on. It was a really nice conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Thanks so much, guys. It was a pleasure having you. All right, now it's time for today's Hidden Gem segment, and the Hidden Gem today is brought to us by Linda.
I wanted to talk about Battambang, which is one of our favorite places that we've stopped in Cambodia. Lots of people, when they go to Cambodia, they go to Phnom Penh and they go to Siem Reap to see the Angkor Wat temples, and those are both wonderful places to go. But you can make your trip to Cambodia just that much better by adding a small detour to this little town called Battambang. So we decided to do that because we wanted just one extra stop, and we hopped on the bus and we got off the bus, and oh my goodness, the bus was crowded by touts. So we weren't quite sure what to do because we hadn't planned where we were going to stay. We were planning to just make a decision when we arrived. So we turned to another guy who was just getting off the bus, who was obviously a tourist as well. We said, have you got a hotel booked? And he said, yeah, I've got a hotel booked and I've got a tuk-tuk picking me up. We said, can we come with you? Basically because we just wanted to avoid being mauled.
Yeah, there were a dozen people outside the bus trying to get our business.
Absolutely. So he said, yeah, hop on, come with me. And so we all got into the tuk-tuk that he'd organised, and we got to the hotel and ended up staying there. It was perfect. But what was even more perfect was the tuk-tuk driver was a really nice guy, a younger guy. He was studying tourism at university, and he said, hey guys, do you want to do a tuk-tuk tour with me tomorrow? And the three of us, brand new friends, we looked at each other and went, all right, because we got a discount, obviously, per person. It was cheaper if there were three of us than if it was just two of us or just him by himself. And it was one of the best travel experiences we've ever had. It was amazing.
Yeah, we went to 3 different main places, but for me, the highlight was going to Cambodia's only winery. The highlight was not drinking the wine. The highlight was just the fact that we got to go to Cambodia's only winery there in this little provincial capital, surrounded by, farmland and agriculture and forest. And yeah, getting to go out there and taste wines and see what they were doing was really exciting.
I like going to the bamboo train. It was this weird thing. They built the platform and they had 2 axles, and they had, what was it, kind of just like a very basic motor that they attached to the axle.
Yeah, it was like an outboard motor that you might put in a small boat.
Yeah. And you basically went for a couple of kilometers along this one rail track to the end where there was a little shack where they sold you Coke or some sort of other soft drink. And then you got taken back again. And of course, there were people coming and going on the same one track. It wasn't like there were 2 tracks, there was the one. So when one bamboo train approached another bamboo train, everyone had to get off, and the train got disassembled, the platform got taken off, the 2 axles got taken off and got reassembled on the other side of the other train. It was just so hilarious.
That's amazing.
So makeshift.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it would pass exactly 0 health and safety checks anywhere in the world, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, and as well as that, we also visited some temples, and we visited a site of genocide, which was quite sad, but quite historically important. We saw a whole bunch of bats leaving. Oh, it was this full day of experiences that included, wine tasting and history and culture and just everything. It was a perfect tour, and it was very well priced and very local tourism. And yeah, it was just really good.
That's amazing.
Oh, and we ended the day, we bought a bottle of wine from the winery, and we ended our day sitting on the balcony with our new friend and had a glass of wine, which was really nice.
Sounds amazing.
What's the town called again? Say the town one more time for me.
Battambang.
Battambang? Am I saying it right?
Yep, Battambang.
Battambang.
That's amazing.
I love it.
You're saying it as right as we know how to say it.
All right.
Awesome.
That's today's Hidden Gem. So, Craig and Linda, where can we find more out about you?
The best place to find us is at indietravelpodcast.com. That's indie like indie rock, not indie like indie car. And you'll also find us on iTunes and anywhere else that you pick up your podcasts by searching for Indie Travel. You'll also find us at Facebook and Instagram at /Indie Travel.
Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah, that's different for us because we're in Indianapolis and everything is Indy, like Indy.
Oh, I should have said more Indianapolis.
Yes.
Because when we first met you guys, I was like, oh, they have another show called Indy? She's like, no, different kind of Indy.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate getting to hear your perspective and you guys giving us your time.
Thanks for having us. It's been really good talking with you.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing the show.
Yeah, thanks again. All right, so we got some incredibly exciting news.
We just got a sponsor.
Your mic's off.
Damn it, Jason. Ah! I can't sound that good again.
All right, so before we start the show, I have some exciting news.
We just got a sponsor.
Yes,
Damn it.
we
Do that
do.
again.
Wow,
That wasn't good. Do it again.
It was
Do it again.
fine.
Hey, you got two dudes again.
It was fine.
No, I didn't like it. There was a little pause. Do it again.
What did you think? Did you guys think it was fine?
Delete it. You got two do-overs. Give me a do-over.
I don't know if we should. Okay, we'll stick it in outtakes. All right, before we start the show, we got some exciting news.
We just got a sponsor.
So, it's no longer going to be sponsor, not sponsor. It's going to be sponsor, really a sponsor.
For real.
So, who's our sponsor, Nicole? Do you know?
I do. No.
Who is it?
Okay, they make... Got this? Stop!
Okay.
Who's on our show today, Jason?
Our sponsor is Indie Wiring Services. Indie Wiring Service is based in Brownsburg. They specialized in high-end wiring harnesses for motorsports and industrial prototyping. From project cars to Indy cars to hybrid vehicle prototyping, Indie Wiring can... Oh, we are going to have to redo this.
This has to be legit perfect. Delete it all. We just got your mom.
Oh, we're going to keep this.